Welcome to the Bible in a Year podcast, a resource from Enter the Bible. Journey with us through the books of the Bible, discovering more about Scripture and how it shapes our lives today. I'm Kathryn Schifferdecker.
I'm Jennie Wojciechowski.
And today we're joined by my old friend and student, Kristin Wendland. Kristin is an associate professor of religion at Wartburg College in Waverly, Iowa, where she's taught since 2017. Teaching courses in Bible, Christian ministry, and biblical Hebrew. She enjoys exploring reception history and ways of interpreting Scripture with her students. Kristin was ordained in 2004 and served ELCA Lutheran congregations in Wisconsin before coming to Wartburg, and she continues to be a guest preacher around northeastern Iowa. She's also a frequent contributor to Working Preacher and Living Lutheran. So thank you so much for joining us, Kristin. So good to see you again.
Hey, good to see you.
And today, this episode is serving double duty. We're talking about two of the so-called minor prophets, which just means shorter biblical prophetic books. And we're talking about the two books of Zephaniah and Haggai. So again, thanks for joining us, Kristin, and we look forward to learning from you.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, so let's just get started. Can you give us a quick summary of both of these books?
Sure. So they are really short. So Zephaniah, 3 chapters long. It starts out actually with quite a bit of judgment. The theme here is about idolatry, or trusting something or someone other than the God who made us. And so this, of course, leads to judgment and even anger on the part of God. And one of the things that happens is we know this as humans, right? There's never one part of our lives that's completely separate from everything else. So when this part of faithfulness or unfaithfulness actually is judged, it affects all their life and the community that they live in and everything around them. Even Zephaniah says all of creation because it's out of whack. And so the first few chapters are really about that. And it can be a little hard to read, actually. And then in the 3rd chapter, we get to the piece of restoration, because a faithful God doesn't leave an unfaithful people, but transforms that people ultimately into a new creation. And so we get a beautiful language of hope and restoration at the end. Haggai is very different. It is actually about rebuilding the temple. I'll talk a little bit more later about why they needed to rebuild the temple, but that's really what it is. Haggai says you need to rebuild the temple. The people aren't sure if now's the right time or if they can't make it perfect. Should we do it at all? And Haggai just keeps saying, now's the time. God is with you. It doesn't have to be perfect, but part of your particular way of being with God includes this temple. And so having God at the center of your lives, here's a physical representation of that and a way to connect. And you should do it now.
That's really interesting. Probably good life advice.
Yeah, do it now. So what's the basic context of both of these books, Zephaniah and Haggai? You mentioned rebuilding the temple. So
right.
What time period are we talking about, and who's the original audience for Zephaniah and Haggai?
Yeah. So one of the challenges with prophetic books often is we don't get the storyline or the context of what's happening, which is why you just asked me this. We just get the message. And so this original audience, their parents, probably grandparents, their ancestors, had been exiled, right? Their city of Jerusalem had been destroyed. Many of them had been led into forcible migration. 587 BCE, about 50 years later, they were allowed to return. The Persian Empire was now in charge in the greater area and said, anyone who the Babylonians exiled or moved around can go home. And about 20 years after that, Haggai is prophesying. And so many, not all, but at least some of those who had been exiled returned to Jerusalem. And of course, it had been 50, 60 years, and they found people living in the homes they had heard about. They had heard wonderful things about the city from their parents and grandparents, and it hadn't actually been rebuilt yet. It was kind of a rough place. And so there was a lot of work to do, both physical rebuilding and then working with the people who had remained or who had moved in and figuring out who they were. And so this is when Haggai is speaking. He says, you've done that part. You've rebuilt your houses. Your community is doing well. You have some prosperity even. Now, what about God's house? It's time for that. So that's Haggai. All right. Now, Zephaniah, go way, way back. So, long actually before that fall of Jerusalem and that exile I talked about, was a king named Josiah. He was king of the southern kingdom of Judah. And one of the things that he is known for is for tearing down the symbols of other gods in the temple and in the area around Jerusalem and Judah. And Zephaniah, as I just said, talks a lot about that. We know that he was a prophet during the time of Josiah. So probably right around the time that Josiah was enacting these reforms would have been when Zephaniah was prophesying. If you know Jeremiah, he's probably just before, maybe a little overlapping with the prophet Jeremiah.
So given that, how would you classify these books' genre? Are they the same? Are they different?
I mean, they're both prophetic books, right? So they're books of prophets. But they wear that mantle of prophet or that role of prophet a little bit differently. I feel like Zephaniah sounds like a lot of the prophets we read in the Bible, right? There's a problem that's been going on. Here are ways you should fix it. There's judgment language in there, understandably. But ultimately, God will be faithful and will redeem you. So I feel like that's a fairly classic prophet, someone who's received and communicates a word from God, sometimes a vision from God. Haggai is doing the same thing, really, but his message is so different, right? It's this build the temple. His message, his word of the Lord to communicate, is really about restoration. And this one specific task that it's time for the people to do. So yeah, they're both prophets. They both have their message, but I'm not sure just reading them side by side, I would say, yeah, this is the same type of literature.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Kristin. We've come to the portion of our episode, our favorite portion, Bible Bingo. Yeah. And beforehand, we asked you to name 5 concepts or words, people, places, etc., that would be on your bingo card as you read or talk about the books of Zephaniah and Haggai. So you gave us some that would apply to both and some that apply to one or the others. I'll list the ones that you gave us, and you'll tell us just a bit about why that particular term would be on your bingo card. So the first term you gave us is oracle.
Yes, that is just a real specific technical term. When we say a prophecy, they're called oracles. We don't always see that in the English Bible, but a prophecy is an oracle.
Yeah, so another word for a prophecy.
Yeah, that's really all it is.
Yeah, which is appropriate since they're both prophetic books. So
why not?
Second term on your bingo card is temple.
Yes. Now this is clear for Haggai, right? Rebuild the temple. Zephaniah doesn't talk exactly about the temple, but it's wrapped up in his concerns about idolatry and who to worship. And thinking about the temple in Jerusalem as that place to connect with God, rightly. And a lot of King Josiah's reforms happened around the temple as well.
So Zephaniah is responding, the people are worshiping in places other than the temple, right?
In places other than the temple, there's also maybe a concern that there are symbols of other gods even inside the temple.
Right,
so I think both of those.
Yeah. Good. So concern for right worship in Zephaniah. Okay, so oracle temple. Third term you gave us is creation.
Yeah, this one's a bit of a wild card. To be a close reader here, But it's clear for both of these prophets that the specific actions of the people that they're talking about don't happen in isolation. That whether it's idolatry or to rebuild the temple or not, it affects not just the individuals or even the people, but the community and even out to creation. So at one point, Zephaniah says, not only will I sweep away the idols and the people, but even all of creation. You can kind of think of a parallel with Noah and the flood and the wickedness of the people leading to this large judgment. And Haggai, too, a little less so, but also has a few tidbits in there about being connected to the heavens and the earth.
So the people's sin or perhaps lack of obedience affects not just themselves,
Right.
but creation itself. Yeah. That's a common theme in the major prophets as well.
It is, and I think we know it in our own lives too, that we're not isolated beings.
Right.
Yeah. I think we know that probably more now than our ancestors did, how directly we affect creation. Good. So Oracle Temple, creation, and then this one, you say particularly for Zephaniah, the day of the Lord.
Yes. So this phrase, day of the Lord, occurs in a number of the prophets, and Zephaniah is one of those. And the day of the Lord is sort of this day when the whole judgment is going to sort of come to pass, right? So there's warning, and when God acts, right, that's the day of the Lord. Sometimes the day of the Lord is more about making things right in terms of Israel's enemies, either being conquered or coming to see Israel as the true people of God, or seeing God as God of the world. In Zephaniah, though, it really is actually, it's you. So there's both. Both we have the nations being judged, but also Israel as well will experience this day of the Lord. And in Zephaniah, as with other prophets, the result isn't just destruction or the purpose, but a transformation or future restoration.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So a day of judgment, but for the aim of restoration. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Or transformation. Yeah, beautiful.
Very hopeful.
All right, last bingo term, and you said this one particularly for the book of Haggai, restoration, actually.
Right, which is the word we just talked about in Zephaniah,
Exactly.
ironically. Yeah. But I picked it for Haggai, I think, because that's the whole thing. They actually have been through this process of rebuilding and being restored as a people and a community. And now this part of the temple is another step in that restoration. So I feel like that whole book is really about what it is to be a restored people of God.
Yeah. After the Babylonian exile. Beautiful. Well, just to recap, Oracle, Temple, Creation, Day of the Lord, and Restoration. Congratulations, you won Bible Bingo. Thanks for playing, Kristin.
We don't have a prize for you, though.
We don't have a prize, yeah.
Okay, here's my favorite question. What is something that's really weird or interesting about these books?
All right, so I don't know how weird either of these books are, but there's definitely some things I find interesting. So Zephaniah, many of the prophetic books start with a little bit of a genealogy, not all of them, but we get one in Zephaniah. We hear who his father is and his grandfather and the father before that. So it goes back about 4 generations, which is long for a prophet. And what genealogies in the Bible do as much as anything else is connect stories and themes. And it turns out that the furthest back ancestor that we learn about for Zephaniah is Hezekiah. Doesn't say it's King Hezekiah, and it may or may not be, but it would be about the right time period. And turns out King Hezekiah cares a lot about idolatry and about cleaning up the temple and the same themes that Zephaniah and ultimately Josiah have. So it's a neat connection and a way to connect Zephaniah, not just to Josiah, but back to Hezekiah, almost as a way of saying, do you remember when we did this the last time and how good it was? And let's do this again. that's my tidbit about Zephaniah.
That is interesting.
Haggai, we get specific dates for his prophecies. So usually we get like this king was reigning, or we have to sort of figure out which flood or earthquake might be being talked about in the book. But Haggai has 5 oracles, and we get not only the year, which is 520 BCE, but we get specific dates. And they all happen, if we turned it into a Gregorian calendar, it would be about from August to December of the year 520. And he is speaking specifically to the high priest and to the governor of Judah. So real specifics. Again, not weird, but I find it really interesting. Specific dates.
Yeah, it's not too often, you're right, that we get that, but like months and days. That kind of specificity. Yeah. All right. Next question, Kristin. Why are these books important for Christian life and theology?
So, Zephaniah, as I said earlier, it can be kind of hard to read. Judgment, I think, is often hard, and it comes with military conquest and suffering and violent metaphors. I don't like thinking about God's anger a whole lot. I much prefer, the God who is good and slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love, which is what is repeated to us so often throughout Scripture. But I think it's important, actually, to name that when things go awry, when we are unfaithful, or when we've turned, right, kind of completely, not like I did something bad today and I said I'm sorry and it's done, but when I've sort of changed my life in a way that has discounted God. And when that happens, naming it as something substantial, I think really matters. And so while it's hard to read, I think it's worth saying, actually, this was a serious thing, and it affects not just you, but it ripples out to affect a whole lot of other people. And then, of course, that it doesn't end there, that the restoration, the relationship, that faithfulness from God does continue. And not just in a now you're okay, but this actual transformation of you are still my people, and as a renewed people, right, you are faithful once more, and you are mine. And so I think that that's a really helpful and important piece there.
Yeah.
You can almost hear language of death and resurrection coming through that pattern. Haggai. So it was a long time before I read the book of Haggai, or I read it but didn't really spend time with it. And I have come to really like this book. I wrote a short piece on it a couple years ago and noticed 2 things. One, right in the middle of it, the middle 2 oracles, the theme is, I am with you. God is with you. And I think about this people in total turmoil, having, as a people, thinking back a few generations, been removed and come back and resettled. I don't know. I often feel like my world is kind of upside down and not sure where to find myself in it. And that message of, I am with you, even before they finish building the temple, I am with you, has come to be really important to me. The other thing that Haggai does is, as he's telling them, this is what you need to do, he also looks backward a lot, and he references a lot of the faithful acts of God in the past. So there's a refrain, take courage. And that's similar to what Joshua used to tell the Israelites as they were coming into Canaan, be strong and be courageous. And that there's reminders of this covenant with God that God made with Israel at Mount Sinai, and that has carried them through to this time. Maybe even allusions to the tabernacle, that movable worship space that was with the Israelites in the wilderness after they left Egypt and before they came to Canaan. There were references to the shaking of the heavens and the earth and the sea and the land and the nations, and thinking again about all of creation. And this looking back isn't just nostalgia for a time that was better, but a way of saying, God who has been faithful continues to be faithful and will be faithful with you now going on. And so I think that's a pretty neat message.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's easy to overlook these books, and especially Haggai, because it seems like he's so focused on the, building of the temple, 2,500 years ago. But that's a beautiful message, and one very pertinent for many of us, right? The God who has been faithful will continue to be faithful.
Yeah. And so often in these books, you have what it says, and when you look at the way that they say it, there's more here. We're talking about God forever.
Yeah. As you're talking, I'm thinking like how strange it would have been for the people returning. Like they were never there. They grew up somewhere else. In a sense, it's like their grandparents' culture, not theirs.
Yes.
So yeah, like just really thinking about that, and wow, that's really interesting.
It is neat. And I feel like there was probably a responsibility for them as well, right? And to think about, we're doing this not just for ourselves, but on behalf of our people. And so to connect back now with these words of Haggai to all their faithful ancestors, it's really neat.
Yeah.
All right. So what is one key theme that you would like our listeners to take from each of these books?
Yeah. So for Zephaniah, I'd say the key is to look behind, not beyond or skip it, but to look behind the violence and the battle language and look at those central themes of seek the Lord who cares for you, find your center in God rather than things that call you away from God, and eventually rejoice in this life that God has given you. And in Haggai, I am with you. Look for the places where God will build up the future just as God has done in the past.
That's beautiful.
That's really nice.
And this may be a little redundant, but this is our final question for all of the people we interview. So describe each book in 7 words or less, and say just a bit again about why you chose that particular phrase.
This was really hard.
I know,
am a
it is
wordy
challenging.
person. So, but
you did
Zephaniah, return to God who is faithful. And for Haggai, God is with you, past, present, and future.
Yeah. So return to God who is faithful. And Haggai, God is with you, past, present, future. Both important words for us today.
I think so.
Thank you so much, Kristin. Really appreciate your
it was great to
talking
be with
about
you.
these. I think you've done a really good job.
Easy to skip over.
Right. It's easy to miss them, right? Yeah. But I hope our listeners enter the Bible to read the books of Zephaniah and Haggai. It won't take you very long. You can do it really easily.
No, it won't.
Right.
Sure.
I mean, they're included in scripture for a reason. And so this is just a wonderful introduction. And for some folks, maybe it's the first time they've ever really looked at these.
Could be.
Yeah. So I think that's really important. Well, thank you. It was really nice to meet you, Kristin.
You're welcome.
This has been the Bible in a Year podcast from Enter the Bible. Check out more great resources on the Bible at enterthebible.org. Whether you're listening on your favorite podcast app or watching on YouTube, we appreciate your following with us. You can get more great resources like this, conversations, reflections, commentaries, courses, anything that you could need as you dive in and enter the Bible with curiosity and faith. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please rate and review or like and subscribe. And of course, the very best compliment you can pay us is to share this podcast with a friend. Until next time.